professional with over a decade of experience in the pharmaceutical and the biotech space. She currently works as a senior principal process development engineer at Edwards Lifesciences, and has held various engineering roles with Catalent, Merck, and Emergent Biosolutions. Driven by a love of science and learning, Jasmine holds a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering degree from Cleveland State University and an MBA from University of Maryland. Jasmine is passionate about helping others, obviously she is, and making a difference, which is why she loves the wonderful world of biotech. Originally from Ohio and the East Coast, she has lived in SoCal for 4 years. Hobbies include bowling league, golf outings, playing piano, and spending time with family and friends. Let's welcome Jasmine.
Thank you, Tracy. That was a wonderful introduction. So hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Good Friday. It is Women's History Month, so very excited to have everyone here, very excited to be here, very excited to speak to you. So without further ado, let's get after it. So we're talking about Women Frontiers in Biotech. My name is Jasmine Burch, and we're going to be talking about challenging the status quo in biotech. Next slide, please. That thing. Okay, now it's working. Okay, so essentially what we're going to talk about today, I'll start with an introduction, a little background about myself. We'll talk about why pharma and biotech. We will talk about women's biotech and pharma workplace challenges, and we will talk about the power of networking. We'll talk about pharma and devices, and again, working at Edwards, and then a conclusion. So as I speak to you guys today, what I really want you to think about are some themes and motifs that are important for women's empowerment, specifically in pharma and biotech. Overcoming adversity, resilience. I think we can all kind of agree that that's important. Agility, the ability to pivot. Confidence, our ABCs, appearance, behavior, communication, networking, always very important. Mindset, and then the question, can you have success without failure? And then finally, what would I do if I weren't afraid? So I just kind of want to talk to you guys for a second about equality and empowerment. I think it's very important for a Women in Pharma event to discuss equality. In terms of working in pharma and biotech, equality would mean for us equal access to opportunities, essentially closing the gender-related pay gap, and essentially you're not going to get these things without empowerment. We have to be empowered in order to achieve equality. So a little bit about me. I am originally from Ohio. Like Tracy said, I am a chemical engineer, did my undergrad at Cleveland State University, completed my MBA at University of Maryland. Prior to moving here, I lived on the East Coast, Washington, D.C. specifically, for about 10 years. I've worked at various pharmaceutical companies, Catalent, Emergent, Merck, non-pharma, did some stint at PPG, a little bit at Avery Dennison. And then, I went to Amgen in Thousand Oaks, and that's actually what brought me to the West Coast, and now I'm here at Edwards. So for fun, I love to travel, and I actually found this picture and decided to share it, but there used to be a program called People to People, and about 10 years ago, it actually, ceased to exist. But it was founded by Dwight Eisenhower in 1956. And essentially, they would take kids and, put them in groups and get a couple of teachers and, take them backpacking across Europe. And thinking about that in today's society, it's like, I don't know. But it was a different time. Either way, my love of travel comes from my actual first trip with the People to People program. So that's a picture of me in Rome at the Colosseum. And that was maybe 2000-ish. And then the picture on the right is my most recent trip to Portsmouth, UK. That is actually a wonderful group of women in engineering. We went to perform some FATs at the Paul factory and got to spend 2 weeks in the UK, so that was awesome. And like Tracy said, I love to bowl, I love to play golf. I'm a huge basketball fan. I try to go to the Warriors games whenever I get a chance. And again, spending time with friends and family. You can see them pictured there. And then that guy on the bottom, that is my big little fur baby. His name is Franklin Saint, and he keeps me on my toes. And more than anything else, I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I love to go to restaurants. My most favorite thing in the world is a seafood tower. And I definitely felt that it was important to note that here today. So if anybody wants to go to Water Grill, just let me know. I'm available. So let's get into it. Why pharma biotech? Number one, the work is rewarding, right? We're helping patients and we're saving lives. We're all superheroes. You could be Wonder Woman, I could be Captain Marvel, you could be like Batgirl, every one of us is a superhero. Working in pharma and biotech is a challenging environment. There's so many projects, innovation, fun things to do. And let's be real, compensation, right? We all want to get paid, make money. Upward mobility, opportunities for women in leadership. And STEM, science is fun, right? How many engineers do we have here today? Okay. How many non-engineers? STEM folks. Okay, yeah, that's right. Science is fun, and that's why we're all here. Building a network, knowing people, that's a good reason to work in pharma and biotech. And again, opportunities for women in leadership, achieving that equality that we talked about earlier, and happenstance. So I'll just share a quick story with you guys. My very first internship was at a lovely place called Avery Dennison. And if you've ever seen that little paperclip logo, they make office products. But beyond that, they also make performance tapes and wraps and all kind of stuff. So I was working there, very young, first job, know nothing about corporate America. And there was an older, cantankerous man that was in the office, and he was very mean. He talked a lot. He, kind of get in your face and really tell it how it is. And I was scared of the guy. I'm like, I don't want to talk to him. I don't know what's going to happen. And one day I needed help learning with an instrument or something, and they're like, oh yeah, just ask him. I'm like, oh God. So I go and ask him. I'm like, hey, you think you can help me, with this? And he pops up. He gets excited. He's like, you know what? Sure. Let's go on over here and do it. So he starts, showing me how to use the machine, and I'm like talking to this guy, and I'm like, man, he actually is really, really nice. It was my own, fear and maybe unconscious bias that made me not want to communicate with this guy. And we become friends at work. Now we're like coffee buddies, hanging around the water cooler, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? And one day he comes to work and he says, have you ever heard of a company called Boehringer Ingelheim? And I'm like, no, what is that? And he's like, my sister-in-law said they're having a big hiring event this weekend. You should go over there. I'm like, I guess, okay. So he sent me the information, and they really were having a hiring event. It was like at a hotel or something, and I went over there. These people were crazy enough to hire me. I was still a student. I was still an undergrad. They hired me as a full-time physical monitoring technician in a cytotoxic, genotoxic facility that produced chemotherapy medications. So essentially, my role was a cross between facilities and micro. I did their entire aseptic training program, being gown and glove certified, learning how to do particulate counts. But what this would actually do was set a foundation for me and my future career within the pharma and biotech industry. And the reason I tell you that story is, if it weren't for one conversation, like what if I just would have said, I'm not going to talk to that guy because he's scary. I might not have ever gotten that job at Boehringer Ingelheim, and maybe I wouldn't be on the trajectory to get here today. So, happenstance. Why pharma? So, let's talk about women's workplace challenges. Flexible work arrangements. That was really more of a thing kind of before COVID. I think we've made many strides in kind of getting that together. Gender pay gap, again, still working on it. Race and gender bias, there's all kinds of trainings, but still exists, right? Access to hot jobs, this is the equality thing we were talking about earlier. Role models. This one, I think, kind of hits everyone because we cannot be what we cannot see, right? If you go into a job and there's no one to look up to, what are you aspiring to be? And for me, that is why I'm extremely passionate about helping others, helping younger women, paying it forward, and trying to be the best representation, that I can be. And again, fear. What are you afraid of? Don't be afraid. Change and vis-a-vis resistance to change. These can all be, challenges. Men in the workplace can be a challenge, and it might be taboo to say, and I won't say it's all, but sometimes other women in the workplace might be a challenge. So we ask ourselves a few questions. How can men be better allies of women in the workplace? And I don't think there's any really right answer or one answer to that. But essentially, be the ally, be this person's friend. If you have a new lady in the department that doesn't know anyone, take her around, introduce her to people, break the ice, get it going. How can women stand in solidarity with one another? I think this one is probably an even longer answer, but in a environment where we are outnumbered, we have to stick together. We have to work together and really, align and try to figure out how do we empower each other to achieve that equality that we were talking about earlier. And lastly, how do women increase their presence in male-dominated environments? You have to do something about it every day. Start working with your youth, young kids, get them involved in STEM, encourage young women, science is fun. Do some algebra. Bring them to tour Edwards. I saw little Emma back there. She's going into life science for sure. So, the power of networking. I really like talking about this because in all of the topics, I honestly feel like networking is the most important because it's a small world. Most of you people know each other. I know some of you, and if you work in this industry, there's not that many of us. But many years ago, I joined an organization. It was called NAPW, or National Association of Professional Women. It was rebranded as the International Association of Women, and I was actually the chapter president for Rockville, Maryland. I won an award or joined the NAPW Woman of the Year Circle for the work that I had done in 2016. And at the time, this lovely lady, Star Jones, was the president of the organization. So one weekend, we got to actually attend a workshop with her. And it was profound because she shared a very personal story about how she got her first start on Court TV. And she essentially said it was her office mate's husband that was putting together a show on Court TV. He calls his wife and says, "Hey, do you want to be on TV?" And she's like, "Absolutely not. Ask Star." And he asked her, and basically the rest is history. And that's how she got involved in the organization because that's basically how she got her start. And so it became very personal for her. And that's what she said. We want you to find like-minded women, network with, and you really don't know where it's going to lead. So, networking as a tool, noun, versus networking as an activity, verb, right? Get up and go to that happy hour. If you sign up for something and then a lot of times you're just like, "Oh God, I don't want to go." Just go anyway. just go anyway. Spend 15 minutes. You don't know who you're going to see. You don't know who you're going to talk to. You don't know who you're going to exchange cards with. Just do it anyway. So how did we get here? I'm going to talk about myself specifically. How did I get here? Specifically for Edwards, a year ago, I did a Women in STEM panel for NSBE. I was still working at Amgen in Thousand Oaks, and I met a very nice young lady on the panel, and as we were answering these questions, and she was asked about her workplace at Edwards, she had great answers. Everything was wonderful. She was talking about the culture, and how, wonderful the campus was and how great the company was, and I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like, I'm gonna apply here. And so I did. And then that guy hired me. Thanks, Edwin. But it all came from just going to a panel and listening to someone talk, and then getting even more specific. How did I get here talking to you today? I went to ISPE, Facility of the Future, in January. Some nice lady named Jenny McCarthy comes up to me. She's like, I'm going to introduce you to Tracy. You look like you want to speak. I'm like, you know what? I do want to speak. Yeah, let's do it. And all of this just stemming from going to a conference, meeting people, talking to others, and it really does have a profound effect on your life from, at least for me, from Boehringer Ingelheim all the way to today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about pharma and devices because I know everyone wants to hear about the great Resilia process that we have here at Edwards. But I'm a part of Mickey's organization. We do process development, and I know there's some people here that have even worked on the Resilia project in the past. Yeah, I see you. That's right. But, so yeah, we essentially work on the implantable devices, and the Resilia process is Edwards' proprietary tissue treatment for our valves, and this is essentially important because the valve will develop calcifications on the tissue over time, which essentially means that that valve will need to be replaced. But with this treatment, that allows the valve to not develop these calcifications, and then it lasts longer, doesn't have to be replaced, as rapidly. So that's why it's important. So my role kind of in this is to actually manufacture these proprietary chemicals and pretty much scale it up and kind of create a turnkey automated solution. And typically you see buffer and solution prep. It's very commonplace in most pharma operations, but guess what? This is a medical device company, right? Edwards is known for heart valves and critical care equipment and a lot of stuff like that, but are they known for, chemicals, chemical processes, chemical manufacturing? No. So this is a new activity. Because of that, with any new activity, that comes with its own set of challenges. Particularly, one is around the mindset. When you work in a pharma operation or in like a GMP environment, there is a very specific mindset around, safety and quality. And it is different from the mindset of safety and quality in a device world. Pharma, everything's, aseptic, very clean. Devices, we're working in like grade C, grade D, or ISO 8 or something. But it's a different mindset. So really starting there to change the mindset to that of a chemical manufacturer has been one of the challenges. And then kind of project management. This is a huge undertaking. A lot of moving parts, a lot of different pieces, trying to kind of rein all that in, keep track of it, get people to execute the tasks. Like that's a big challenge. Resources. I think we need more people. That's another challenge. But really, the entire job is just about creating a robust process and procedure for having a turnkey solution prep area, right? It sounds so simple, but you all work in pharma, right? You know it's not simple. Innovation, that's another part of our job. Finding a better solution for tomorrow. You know, there's a lot of different kind of research projects, R&D, a lot of that going on, and essentially we were tasked with helping with the kind of scale up and manufacturability of these solutions. So always looking for new ways, always continuing to automate. That's really kind of what the role is. Boop. Okay, so now it brings us to our conclusion. So I added some quotes here that I just kind of like, that I think go with our women's empowerment theme. So starting from the top, only a fool learns from his or her own mistakes. The wise woman learns from the mistakes of others. And I think this is profound because if you work in pharma and you've seen something done and you know that it doesn't work, why would you do it again? Because that's the way we've always done it, right? Well, I want to try it. It didn't work for Bob, let me do it. And I think we have great strides, you know, learn from the mistakes of others. Don't make the same mistake twice. Beauty fades, dumb is forever. Judge Judith Scheinlin. That's particularly one of my favorites. I just love that quote. Keep your head, heels, and standards high. Coco Chanel, I kind of like that one. I didn't do heels because I didn't want my feet hurting, so. A woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her in hot water. Eleanor Roosevelt. I particularly like that one because working in pharma and biotech, how many times do you find your back against the wall for a deadline or a deliverable or something that someone needs, and they're like, oh gosh, I don't think she's gonna get it done. Yes, I am. Martin Luther King. The ultimate measure of a woman is not where he or she stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he or she stands at times of challenge and controversy. I really like that one because when everything's great, like we're all great, right? But when stuff's not great, how do we react? Because specifically in pharma, these projects, everything's not always gonna go to plan. Like, something's gonna happen. We're gonna have scope creep, or we're gonna miss a deadline or something, but are we gonna give up? Or are we gonna go back to the drawing board and kind of figure out how we keep it moving forward? You never get a second chance to make a first impression. That one I think is very important. Always be on your A game. Always be closing ABCs, like always be closing. Present yourself pretty much the best way you can at all times, because you don't know who's watching. You don't know how these things go. So, you know, always put that best foot forward. I am a woman, phenomenally phenomenal woman. That's me. I mean, I love that one, right? Who Moved My Cheese? So, like, this book is really, really old. Many people might have heard of it. But specifically for working in pharma and biotech, the environment is always changing. We're dealing with new regulations. We're dealing with new people. We're dealing with people that have been here for 40 years. So we're meshing all these different personalities. We're meshing all the things that we have to do. And this wonderful story is maybe like a 20-minute read, and it's just a fable of characters, hem, haw, sniff, and scurry. And I encourage you to read that and figure out who you are. Are you a hem? Are you a haw? Are you a sniff? Are you a scurry? And I really wish I would have read this book like 20 years ago. I didn't, but someone gave me this book, and I feel like it changed my life because I don't sweat the small stuff anymore, you know. Cheese is moldy. I gotta go find my cheese, whether it's a Brie or Swiss or, you know, Jarlsberg or something. And finally, network within other groups and organizations. Now, we're all members of ISPE. love ISPE, but I'm sure we're members of SWE, Society of Women Engineers, NSBE, that's National Society of Black Engineers, I'm in NSBE. WCEC is Women of Color in Engineering, and WEPAN, which is Women in Engineering Proactive Network, and of course AICHE if you're a chemie like me. But I definitely encourage you guys to look up WCEC and WEPAN. Both of these organizations are relatively new, and were actually started with a grant from the National Science Foundation to essentially address the challenges that we talked about here today, right? Getting that equality, empowering women in order to get that equality. They offer a lot of, coaching, diversity, leadership development, and it really is sort of like this, a great group of women. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And I think that brings us to the end. Questions or anything like that? Q&A? No? All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Tracy, and we will have our next speaker, which is Sarah Brick.